Welcome to Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Brought to you by our title sponsor, Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Come along with us as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. We have partnered with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab to help get you in shape and mentally stronger. Whether you're a veteran hunter or just starting out, the Mountain Tough app will take you to the next level. We personally train using the Mountain Tough programs, and we believe in it so much that we want to give you 6 weeks for free using code SHEEPBC. That's SHEEPBC. Check out Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. You won't be disappointed. Well, good evening, Mr. Rensmag, coming in hot from Prince George. How's it going, brother?
Oh, not too bad yourself. Just living the dream up here, and apparently winter went away this weekend. So how's it going with you?
Yeah, good. It's can't complain too much. November is rolling around. It's trying to keep the podcast train rolling. It's always a tough time during hunting season. So there's a sharp drop off in guests, and then all of a sudden December, January rolls around, and everyone's back. So
oh yeah, that fall season is something else. Trying to get guests, they're not even saying no. They're busy. They're not even seeing the messages. They're responding and then a couple months later, yeah, we'll get everybody answering back, hey, I'll come on now. It's like, well, we were looking for you a couple months ago, but sure, let's stack up the podcasts.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's good to hear your voice, man. We haven't talked for a couple of weeks either. But good to connect here. And so huge news for the podcast. And
absolutely.
Yeah. So our good friends over at Mountain Tough Fitness have come on as our title sponsor, and we're absolutely freaking elated to have them. Obviously, a great brand, and they've got such a great name, 2% certified, and really good people over there, and great programs. I used mine for my doll hunt this year, and just awesome programming. And they're obviously offering a discount code for people to try it out, to take the program, take it for a drive for 6 weeks, and see how you like it. And if you're like me, I tried it out. I'm like, yeah, I need this. And so I'm going to be doing their off-season program here during the wintertime and just staying, I guess, in moderate sheep shape and be ready for my doll draw for 24, I guess, right?
Oh, man. If you get a doll draw in 24, I'm writing a letter to somebody. So, yeah, no, that discount code will be in our show notes too, so take advantage of that. Give it a 6-week trial, and I'm sure you'll be buying in right after you're done that 6 weeks.
Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, really excited to be working with Mountain Tough Fitness Labs, and we've had Dustin on the podcast before. We'll have him on again. And, so welcome to the podcast, Mountain Tough Fitness. Thanks for jumping aboard, and we look forward to sharing the message with you guys over the next year here. So,
yeah, it's kind of funny. Someone's company supporting our voices, but hey, here we are. Something happened this past weekend, Saturday night. We had a couple of draws go down.
Yeah, so thank you again to everyone that supported all our raffles. It's incredible to support. We had 2 fantastic raffles. We had our Jurassic Classic Sacco Rifle raffle, which is supporting our Fraser River Test and Remove program. Full donation from Sacco, Seiko, and Steiner Optics, and couldn't be more elated to the support they've given us. That was a full sellout, and it will go a long ways to support our conservation initiatives here in BC on the Fraser. And of course, you're very familiar with that, Greg, having spent all the time up there doing the sheep counts. And then our Danny Strong, and again, another amazing raffle. This raffle is so phenomenal because it was member-driven, it was member-supported, and it supported one of our members that's no longer with us, part of our sheep family, Danielle Cabana, 6-year-old, and Dennis and Teresa was their daughter. She passed away last year. Absolutely heart-wrenching story. But what we've done is we ran this raffle. It was supported by Nolan and Amanda Wanup and a whole bunch of other members that got together, put the resources together, went to Precision Optics. Precision Optics kicked in and put together this amazing raffle, over $32,000 in prizes, and we drew that winner on Saturday night. Dennis and Teresa were over for that. Nolan and Amanda came down, and just you could just feel the energy and it's just amazing, but what it's done is it's created this legacy for Danielle. Her name will be forever enshrined as a monarch. Of course, the money's going to our conservation efforts here in BC. It's still going to support wild sheep, but it's also going to create this legacy, this memory, a conservation legacy in Danny's name. So amazing. And congratulations to our 2 winners. If you haven't heard the winner, if you haven't heard from me, you haven't won. That's the bad news. But if you want to know who won, it's up on the website now, and we send an e-blast out and everything. So, but we've got a cool new raffle out, and again, another memorial piece, again, driven by our members. Greg, our members are phenomenal. Like, the Wild Sheep Society BC membership is unreal.
Yeah, I don't even want to call them members anymore. That's just family. We're one big family, and they're all the lifeblood of this organization, and they just keep the wheels turning for us. It's an incredible family to be a part of, and you can never say enough good things about the membership we have.
Yeah, well stated. So this raffle, it's our Big Boar series, which is a memorial series raffle, and Don Lyman's been driving this bus now for several years. One of our past directors, Dave Marsh, who we lost a number of years ago now, his memory's been kept alive through this Big Boar raffle. And Don's donated another rifle. He donated one for recently for our Kamloops convention, and he's donated this 280 AI. It's unbelievable. This is super cool, Greg. It's got a special serial number. He went out. You can get a serial number. You got to order it, of course, and there's a process. But the serial number on this rifle is 2023 WSSBC. That's the rifle serial number. So it's so super cool. It's got a Defiance anti-long action. It's topped with I think it's a Nikon. Oh, sorry, it's a Zeiss V4 scope. Yeah, Nikon. Sorry, slipped there. And just carbon fiber barrel, the whole works. Absolutely gorgeous rifle. It's custom built by Gary Flack, like all these Don Lynham Big Boar rifle series are, and it's absolutely tricked out. So check it out. We'll put the notes on that in the show notes as well. But amazing rifle, and again, that serial number. How cool is that?
Yeah, that's a one of a kind piece, and I don't know. I don't have any rifles in my safe that got a WSSBC serial number, but luckily for everybody out there listening, I can't win it. Can't even buy a ticket.
Me either. I know.
Stupid rules.
That's the one thing that sucks about it. It's like the directors can't enter, can't win. So yeah, which makes sense. I get it. Doesn't look good, but okay. Something's happening. We got our Salute to Conservation and Mountain Hunting Expo we've moved this year to Penticton. We've got a brand new, huge facility, and registration is now open. Head over to wildsheepsociety.com, and the links are on the front page of the website. And this year is a year if you're going to come to our show, this is it. And we're creating this Mountain Hunting Expo, and it's for mountain hunters. We have Aaron Snyder's going to be there. We got Adam Foss is going to be there. Julie McQueen from Carbon TV is going to be there. There's just a huge lineup of people that are connected to the outdoors. We're going to have a podcast booth. We're inviting all the podcasters in our space to come and hang out. And I think Mr. Nickel is going to be there. He's going to have a booth, I believe, but he's certainly going to be podcasting at the show. So lots of really cool stuff going on. We got some great names that are coming this year. A great lineup. We're growing significantly over what we've had in the past. We were always constrained in Kamloops, but Penticton is a great new venue. It's huge. It's going to be a Friday night banquet and a Saturday night banquet. We got the Mountain Hunting Expo, of course, Life Member Breakfast. We got all our backpack races and some huge sponsors. It's going to be one for the books for sure. I'm so stoked, Greg.
Yeah, it's exciting times, and this is going to be a game changer, not just for us, but a game changer for mountain hunting. Because where can you go? Where can you go? Get all those people in one room, especially here in BC. It doesn't happen, and we're going to have every booth is going to be something you need for the outdoors, and you're going to be able to get it in that room And plus, you're going to have a great time with us. So, hey, make sure you go. We'll be there.
Yeah.
You can see Kyle's shiny face everywhere.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, but we're trying to sell the thing, buddy. Come on.
Well, you'll be walking around doing your handshakes, kissing babies, the usual politics.
And the cool thing is we're going to do our Sheep Hunter University again this year, and we're running seminars. Basically, start Friday at 10 a.m., all day Friday, all day Saturday, and you can go down and meet with the best of the best and have discussions about everything you need to know about mountain hunting. We've got a really, really cool lineup. We haven't released that lineup yet, but it'll be up here shortly. But like I said, some of the headliners we've mentioned earlier, and just great people in our space. And you're gonna, if you want to learn about mountain hunting, that's the place you want to be. Guys reach out all the time, like, I want to go sheep hunting. How do I do it? Well, come to the show. That's how you do it. That's how I did it. I got my first sheep because I went to that show, and I can't say enough about it. And on top of it, just for anyone up north, our northern fundraiser's open now too. Of course, that always sells out, and it's well on its way. We're about 65% or 70%. We opened up just over a week ago. So obviously, if you're thinking about our northern fundraiser, and so that's February 2nd and 3rd. February 3rd, is it? In Dawson Creek for our northern fundraiser. And then our Kamloops our Penticton event, the Salute to Conservation. Sorry, Greg.
It's okay. We're turning the table here. So
is the night of the 22nd, we're doing a whiskey tasting, which is a Thursday night, and that's open to anyone that wants to. You can buy tickets on that. That's up on the website. Of course, we'll have some Chadwick whiskey there, I suspect. And then on the 23rd and 24th is our 2 full days of shows. Life Member Breakfast the morning of the 24th, and it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, it's don't miss out. Grab your tickets, because every single year we get how can I get my tickets? They're sold out on the website. Emails, phone calls, text messages. Just don't wait. Get on it.
Yep.
Yeah. We'll be advertising it everywhere, and if you want to see what's going to be happening and who's going to be there, follow our social media, as we're going to start drip feeding you all sorts of good information. So if you're hesitant on buying tickets, you won't be for long if you're watching us.
Awesome. Well said. Okay, enough of us. Let's talk to someone that's super interesting. Not that you're not interesting, Greg, but Dr. Ryan Brock is he's unbelievable. This guy is amazing. He has done so much for youth. He's works with the Wild Sheep Foundation, and he basically runs the youth programs for the Wild Sheep Foundation. But he happens to be a full-time teacher as well, and does a whole bunch of other stuff. The guy is just unbelievable on how much he's accomplished in his life. He's won so many awards for all the work that he's done, and he's introduced so many people to sheep, wild sheep, to hunting, the outdoors, and just a phenomenal guy. So Ryan's got a really cool story. We're really grateful to have him on the show, and I think you're really going to enjoy this chat with Dr. Ryan Brock from the Wild Sheep Foundation.
This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Yeti. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Yeti, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems.
Well, awesome to see your smiling face, Ryan. I see you're sitting in the classroom there. And so where are you coming to us live from?
So I am coming from Reno, Nevada. I'm in my 5th grade classroom, room C5 of Jesse Beck Elementary School.
Awesome. So for those that don't know you, Ryan Brock is Dr. Ryan Brock. It leads Wild Sheep Foundation's youth initiatives, and you've done so much on the youth front, Ryan, and there's so much to dig into. But kind of before we dig into all that stuff and all the great work that you're doing and continue to do day in and day out, what got you to where you're at today? So where did this come from? How did you get started? I guess in education and your zest for hunting and the outdoors.
You know, I never, ever wanted to be a teacher. My mom was a teacher. My grandparents, even my great-grandparents, were teachers. My dad worked for the wildlife refuge system, so I always wanted to go into wildlife management. And it was in college I made that shift. I did a summer recreation program and just fell in love with the education part and switched it, and eventually found out that I love teaching specifically about science. And so got my degree and started teaching elementary school. And it was when I was in Reno, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation had a world bugling championship that would come. And my dad would always come down, we'd go to it. And I thought I can get a group of kids together and we can go teach them to bugle. And that kind of started it. That became a tradition at the school for about 8 years. We would go and teach kids how to make calls of the elk. And eventually that triggered a turkey club and a duck club. And then I was working on my doctorate up at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I had to choose a thesis. And I was fascinated with how to develop environmental identity in children. And I used those nature clubs that were lunch clubs and turned them into after school clubs, and ended up getting a doctorate studying kids and developing and creating connections to nature for the most part. So that's kind of what triggered it all. And the Wild Sheep Foundation reached out to me right after my PhD when I was done with everything. And I told my wife, I'm done. I just want to teach. We had our first child. I said, I want life to be simple. And Gray Thornton reached out to me and said, hey, we hear great things about you and we're looking for someone to hire. And it really, my wife and I had a conversation. I wasn't so sure. And she's like, this is what you've worked your whole life for. Like, this is your passion. And I'm so glad that I accepted. I've just had such a great 12 years or so with the Wild Sheep Foundation by now.
That's very cool, Ryan. So there's kind of two aspects. There's the teaching and the doctorate side of things, and then there's the youth and the outdoors side of things. Did you grow up as a hunter? Was it in your blood as a young kid, or?
Yes, my dad, I think, was born 100 years too late. He should have been a mountain man. And so we grew up backpacking. I grew up hunting with him, and hiking and backpacking. And so I got my passion, from both my parents, but my dad was the one that was really passionate about the outdoors and the hunting. And so that carried on to me. Once I got into high school and college, I got out of hunting through college for a little bit. And then when I was in my first couple of years teaching, got right back into trying hunting at that point, kind of on my own, and kind of learning to kind of, clean an animal by myself for the first time, and as we all do, and make that transition to doing it independently. And ever since, I just love it. I love introducing kids to all aspects of the outdoors, nature and archery, all that.
That's awesome. So did you grow up in the Nevada area, or were you elsewhere?
A little of both. My parents were divorced, and I was in Durango, Colorado, and my dad was up in Medicine Lake, Montana, working on a wildlife refuge. So I'd spend all summer in the middle of nowhere on a wildlife refuge on my bike and just explore. I have a skull collection to this day from all the skulls that I found that I still use teaching in 5th grade. He ended up moving to Colorado to be closer to us, just 3 hours away. And so that's when I really got into the hunting. I was, at that point, heading out with him to the duck blinds, and 4th, 5th, 6th grade really involved with a lot of the bird hunting. And then 9th grade ended up moving with him. And we did a lot of hunting, first kind of big game elk and big game deer at that point.
Very cool. Now, the wildlife refuge, what was that set up? What did that entail?
He worked on several. That was a duck refuge. And from there, he came down to Alamosa Wildlife Refuge, and that was a duck refuge predominantly as well. And I ended up in the summer times getting jobs there doing duck nest studies. And it was more of a volunteer deal. I got like $12 a day. By the third year, first time I just went out to walk with him and just kind of, see what was going on. Then he moved to the Ouray Refuge in Utah. And by then I was in high school, so I could actually do it a little bit more as an actual volunteer. And it was like a couple-week job. So I had a lot of experience, and even applied for a scholarship here in Nevada. My mom moved to a tiny town in southern Nevada, and I went to high school in Moapa Valley, and there was a scholarship for wildlife management. And Department of Wildlife actually flew me up to Reno my high school year and interviewed me. And I didn't get it. They said I was too focused on, I felt, knowing what I wanted. I wanted to work on a wildlife refuge like my dad And there's so many other aspects of wildlife management. And so I didn't get it. And what's neat is I was able to pull that around and now pull all of those passions of wildlife into the teaching I do, both in the classroom and informally through the Wild Sheep Foundation.
That is awesome. So now specifically, is it science that you're teaching? I think you mentioned grade 5. Is it science? Do you do mathematics as well? Or
yes,
how does that work?
It's all of it. I teach the English language arts, the social studies, the science, computer science. I'm real passionate about that as well, and teaching coding and things. But my passion is math and science, but specifically math. All my degrees have minors in science and science education. And I taught at UNR for a couple years as an exchange program with our school district and taught pre-service teachers. And my favorite classes were the science methods and science practicum classes.
Very cool. So now, how does this translate from not really wanting to do any teaching that wasn't really a thing to get your doctorate, and you've taken it, so is education a big thing in your family, or is that something you got into the school part of it, you're like, I love this, and you just were passionate and kept going? How does that work?
Both of my parents from the very beginning, very young, told me I was going to college. We had savings accounts from elementary school, and getting into middle school and high school, my dad would kind of show me how much I had. So it was always expected I was going. It was expected I'd move out of the house and move into the dorms that freshman year. And so that was always kind of there for me. Switching into teaching was different. My dad, I'm not sure he enjoyed it as much as my mom. My mom was a teacher. My dad totally gets it and understands now. I think there's some natural tendencies that I have that go into making me maybe more effective teacher than maybe some other people. I don't know what it is. It's hard to nail down, but I'm passionate about it. And the kids really seem to relate to those passions. And I try to find the things that excite me and tie that into our reading, tie it into our math and our science. And I think that has that connections with the kids. And I think I'm able to do that in the informal realm as well. Just with those outdoor passions I grew up learning about as a kid, and they still excite me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned your dad, and he wasn't really expecting the teacher thing. Was he thinking you'd be following his footsteps in the wildlife regime in some capacity?
It was always from third grade on, yep, I want to work on a wildlife refuge. And I kept saying that. And, he was always telling me, you got to work hard. It's hard to get a job like what I'm doing. You have all these other people you're competing with. And so, it was never in my mind anything else. Until I started having some experiences with working with kids. And when I did that switch in college, all but one class counted, because I switched pretty early on, right in that freshman years when I decided to change over with that. And the doctorate was an interesting thing. I never was expecting to get a doctorate. Once I became a teacher, my mom always told me, you've got to get higher education. To make money as a teacher, you can't stay with the bachelor's. Take a year off, get the master's, and you get these pay raises. And they're not much, but they're enough. And over 30 years of teaching, they count quite a bit, so you want to get them early on. And so I got my master's, and then I got hired up at UNR here in Reno, and I was working with all my professors from my master's program. And my main advisor says, hey, we have a PhD program. Why don't you get it? I'm like, I don't know. I was going to only be there for 3 years as a 3-year deal. And I was paying for parking. That was a big deal. I was already paying for parking. I got reduced tuition because I was working there. And I was already up there. And he goes, we can try getting it in 3 years. And that was the push. And so I did it. Oh. And then Dr. Crowther was really trying to push me to be a science educator in college. And there were a couple spots open in Kansas and Nebraska. And I just didn't have a desire really to move there. It was right during the housing crunch where everything was falling apart. And my wife and I didn't want to be new people at the bottom of the totem pole in these other places trying to find jobs. So I ended up very luckily getting hired back at my same elementary school, but as a doctor. And it's kind of a cool deal, it's the first thing when kids come in. We always talk about, I'm a doctor, but you cut yourself and I'm going to give you a Band-Aid. That's it. I'm a different type of doctor. So it's kind of a fun little joke that we kind of do, and the kids play off it as well throughout the school year.
So Ryan, how common is it where you have someone such as yourself that's so highly qualified with a doctorate that's in, middle school or elementary education? Is that pretty common, or obviously pretty common in a college, but is that common in at that level?
You'll see it once in a while in high schools or elementary, middle schools, not very much. I know there is a middle school teacher here in Reno who's working on getting her doctorate. There will be some, but they're usually in administration, and they specifically go into an administration doctorate, and it's a little bit different. I ended up getting the PhD, and it was one of those things where I purposely did not take a single course in administration. I wanted nothing to do with running the administration of the school. I like the teaching. I like the hands-on with the kids and creating that passion. And so I can't ever be hired as an administrator. So I'll always make lower wages as a teacher, but it's where I choose to be.
Awesome. So let's talk about the branch over to, I guess, the Wild Sheep Foundation. Actually, before we do that, how much of the stuff that, the outdoor stuff, archery, educating about the science end of things about wildlife, do you do in the classroom itself? How much would you say, what portion of your time would you spend on something like that?
We do quite a bit on a daily or weekly basis. It's limited. For a good decade, starting probably my third or fourth year, I started doing those nature clubs, and that would be during lunchtime and things like that. And I could see that I could reach out to conservation groups, and it started with Northern Nevada Safari Club International. I heard about this camp called American Wilderness Leadership School up by Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I reached out to a local chapter of SCI, and they sponsored me and paid for my way to go up there for a week-long summer camp. And I came back and I started doing these clubs, and I reached out to them for like $400 to get some animal calls to teach kids about bugling. Every year I asked for a little bit more. Eventually they talked me into being on their board. And so then I started having a little more insight into how conservation groups kind of work and the fundraising that goes into that, and then how the money gets distributed to worthwhile causes. In the classroom, then I also learned that I could do these field trips that could be overnight. I had never heard of that in when I was in elementary school or middle school. And so I started taking just my class on a camping trip, and we tie in the science where they're collecting data, analyzing it. And it was just a one-night trip. And eventually that moved into a whole grade level where we would take 80 to 100 kids all camping, lots of parents, they all planned their own meals. So that's where a lot of my passion started pulling into those parts. When I came back from UNR, I wanted to then create a fifth grade field trip because I had taught fourth grade previously with the overnight trip, but I wanted it to be different. And that led up to now we take all the fifth graders on a 4-day, 3-night, overnight outdoor school experience into California. And I really hope to create those long-lasting memories. They're not going to remember a math lesson on multiplying decimals. They're going to remember those hands-on experiences that are different, whether they're in the classroom or outside. But I think going to what I call a dirt floor classroom are really where those experiences are going to be remembered long-term.
Yeah, very inspiring. So where does funding for that come? Is that something the school pays for? Is it something that you guys fundraise outside of it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it is all 100% fundraised from outside sources. And, originally it was pretty inexpensive. We'd take a school bus, a one-night overnight trip. We'd ask the parents to provide food that the kids would plan. And so really it wasn't much money. Eventually school buses became harder to come by, and fourth grade now has to rent a charter bus. So the kids do fundraising throughout the year. It's like $40 for that trip. For overnight one, it's getting close to $400 a kid, and I spend a lot of time writing grants for that. And I've been very successful in Nevada here with some conservation groups that have been able to help me fund that. And so for the 11 years that we've been taking these kids on the overnight one for almost a whole week, they don't pay anything. It's been fully funded the whole time. And I think that's important. I think conservation groups understand that. They might not be able to fund the whole thing, but they can chip in a little bit here or there. I look into, there's a Geological Society of Nevada. And so if we do anything with rocks and minerals, so we specifically do one lesson where we can then connect that and get another, $400 or $500 to help pay for busing there. So it's a lot of work. But to me, once I'm out there, all that hard work pays off, and I just get to watch the learning that happens that can't happen inside four walls of a classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool. So you talked about Northern Nevada SCI. They were kind of a partner with you guys, or with you early on. And then the foundation, you talked about Gray reaching out. So did he hear? Because I know I think it's Marty Harson is maybe connected through both. And is that the connection, or how did the Wild Sheep Foundation stumble across Dr. Brock?
Yeah, good question. So really funny and a lot of irony in there. So I started these after school clubs, and then with Northern Nevada SCI and that group, including like Marty, there was an outdoor camp that was going to start. And Northern Nevada SCI was one of the founding members that was going to kind of help put that together. And so I was recruited to be on that board just with my work with being part of those groups. And I was part of Northern Nevada SCI at that time as well. And so I was on that board for a couple years. And Brett Jefferson, former board member of WSF, was aware of me. And at that point, they were looking to incorporate in to our chapters kind of a traveling youth wildlife conservation experience. And so they were looking for someone in Reno that could be a teacher that would have maybe outbranch to the school district to have that buy-in, that could do a lot of the organizational roles. And so Brett kind of referred my name. I had at that point never heard of the Wild Sheep Foundation. Kind of crazy to think about. I was very much involved with Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, one of the affiliates here in Reno. And I get this email. It was the weirdest thing. I had 2 weeks left. I was doing a science camp at the Discovery Museum. I was their coordinator for the summer. And I get this email, and it's like, hey, here's who I am. We're looking for someone. Brett Jefferson recommended you. And he wanted me to kind of reach on out. And I reached out and had kind of a little phone conference with him. And he then Gray came down to Reno. And we ended up meeting and talking a little bit. And from there, I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a fantastic thing to be a part of. And the rest is really history. I flew up there a couple weeks before school started. And at that point, they were in Cody, Wyoming. And we went out to lunch, had a meeting. I met everyone in the office. And from there on out, I've been part of this organization.
So everything you do with the foundation, then that's kind of totally independent of what you're doing school-wise. So you got your day job, and this is your kind of your night job or your weekend job, whatever you want, your side hustle.
Yeah, it's funny because, Gray was very aware I had a full-time teaching job, and I had kind of stressed that, I'm just started a family. We had like a 6-month-old, and he's like, oh, no, this is, predominantly a summertime deal. You'll do the youth wildlife conservation experience at the Reno Sheep Show. And the prior year I had helped, at the time there was a lady working for the Sheep Foundation who helped put that on. So it was going to run that YWCE and then probably 5 or so events throughout the year with chapters and affiliates as kind of a traveling youth wildlife conservation experience. And it comes down to very few events take place in the summers. They're all kind of the rest part of the year. So I kind of have my day job and my early morning and late night job with the Sheep Foundation.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of what you do for Wild Sheep Foundation. So you talked about YWCE, Youth Wildlife Conservation Experience, and then there's also the SHEEP program, SHEEP. So kind of break those down. And is there more going on top of that with the youth stuff as well, Ryan?
Yeah, so how it started was back in around 2010, 2011, the Potterfields with Midway USA Foundation approached a couple conservation groups, and Wild Sheep Foundation was one of those. And they had some funding to have at the national convention a youth area, and they're the ones that came up with this youth wildlife conservation experience. I think Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, I think, was part of that. The maybe Turkey Federation was part of that. And so there was some funding there that got that going. That was successful that first year. And so prior to me joining, they wrote to the Potterfields and said, hey, we'd like to take this to another level. Instead of a once a year deal, what if we branch this out into a traveling YWCE? And the Potterfields accepted it as part of kind of this endowment deal. They were going to give some funding to get started for 3 years and a certain amount each year to kick it off and then kind of have us be in charge of fundraising from there on out. And so that's where I got hired in, was right in that transitional period. We had just been accepted that they were going to help partner with us. And so I came in, the money was there, and then it was just designing, what will this look like exactly? What do we need? How are we going to do the outreach? And that's how it all started. And that was, I think, 2012.
So that's, so the program's been around almost, over 10 years now. So with that, the Midway USA money is still there. There's an endowment there, I believe, and you guys get offtake every year from that, don't you?
Correct. And there's been some changes with that over time. Originally, they gave us a chunk of money that would run the YWCE indefinitely. That we'd take a certain percent off every year and kind of keep running that. The rest of the money was kind of a yearly deal that would come in and leave and come in and it'd get spent. And it was, a break-even type program until we got it going, and then, figure out ways to kind of bring in money from there. At one point, Midway came to us and said, hey, that money that you have in your endowment, if you put it in our endowment for you, we'll match it. And so we had $400,000, and when we put it in theirs, they put in $400,000. That real quickly came pretty close to $1 million. And so now all of a sudden we're making a lot more money. And since then, we spend a lot of time trying to do fundraising, and any fundraising that we do usually runs our program, but they have specific things like shotguns and rifles and fancy hearing protection and optics that they will give to youth shooting teams. We're considered one of those type of shooting teams for free. We can auction those off, raffle those off. We have to give back a certain amount. Anything over we get to keep, but anything that goes back, they then match again and put in our endowment. So it's a win-win-win situation, and we've been able to continually over 12, 13 years get that endowment up pretty good. It's not fully funding our programming by any means, but that's how it started, was with the YWCE. SHEEP program stands for Shooting, Hunting, Ethics Education Program. And that was the traveling YWCE in a sense. It was, let's go out, let's teach kids about shooting, safe shooting, hunting, and the ethics that is involved in that, and just education in general. And Kevin Hurley came up with that acronym for it, pretty much spare the moment. And so it's kind of cool that a lot of times it's hard to come up with a good acronym, and he spotted out right away.
That's awesome. So back to the endowment, just out of curiosity, are you able to share like what that endowment's at now in terms of how much is in that kitty, or is that?
Yeah,
it doesn't, not a big deal. I'm just curious more than anything.
I'm trying to get it to $2 million. That would be awesome. I know I think we're at like 1.4 or 1.6 million.
Okay.
And then we get to draw off once a year. We can request funding through kind of a grant deal of 5%. And again, as the market goes up and down, it goes up and down as well with that. And so some years we get a big chunk, and other years it's a little bit less. It just kind of depends on the market with that. But it's funny. I got these hammocks last year, and they say Wild Sheep Foundation on them, and I use them as giveaway or prizes at certain youth events. And at the sheep show last year, I put out a little thing and said, hey, hammocks, donate to our endowment. Midway will match it, and we'll give you this hammock for free with a $30 donation. And we got 12 donations, and it's $30, but that $30 goes in. They were matching at that time 1-to-1, so that was $60. It sounds small in comparison to 1.4 million or whatever, but man, all that little bit, I just keep thinking that now I get 5% of that amount more each year as it comes in. Forever.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so it ideally, in the next decade, it would be really neat to get that to a point to where it's self-funding itself, and we don't have to keep going out and requesting more money. But like everything else, rates go higher with everything. The youth event at Sheep Show costs way more than it did. Food now is 2 to 3 times more than it started with in 2012. And audio video equipment and the labor for that is more money. So even as the market goes up and we're making more, we're spending more, and it's just the game that we're all familiar with.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and you talk about it, initially it was a couple 100,000. It was 1 year funding, then 3 year, and then it was 400,000, doubled 800, and now you're knocking the door of 2 million. And it just, every little bit counts, right? It's phenomenal.
And I remember it wasn't that long ago. It was, but it didn't seem that long ago. I'm like, man, our goal, and you could put the goal. What is our goal on the endowment website? And I put, I'd like to get to $1 million. And I'm like, wow, that just sounds amazing. And then it was 1.2 all of a sudden. I'm like, this is so cool. We just keep trying to get donations in there. And I'll tell you, Iowa FNAS has been amazing. 2 years in a row, Craig over there has reached out and said, all right, give us 4 or 5 items from their website. I have them shipped over to him. A lot of the rifles and guns obviously have to go to the right person there, and his son can accept those firearms. And then they do all year build these raffles, and they'll raffle one thing off every so many months. And then at their final convention, they do the big, here's the big prizes. And they'll raise, $8,000 to $10,000 that way on free items. They send that $8,000 back to Midway, who matches it. And now that $8,000 is $16,000. And this past year, they raised, I think it was $10,200 or something like that. That then gets matched. That's big numbers. That's way better than selling hammocks for $30 each. And it's something that they're passionate about youth as well. And they're doing this fundraising anyway. And they would fundraise, and they might help me out in getting me to their convention and stuff. And this is just a different transition on, hey, we're doing this anyway. Why not use what's you have kind of going on there anyway, and do that as kind of our helping the conservation program that you're in charge of.
Awesome. So that includes optics and other issues. It's not strictly firearms. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. About every 6 months they change it. And they have like coolers on there, the big fancy coolers. They had a trap machine. I think Craig got the trap machine last year and tried doing that. They have all sorts of different guns and scopes and optics and rangefinders. And they have things that are very affordable for, like knives. That maybe aren't so much money, and you have to raise, $350, and other things you've got to raise, maybe $2,000 or $3,000. It's based on the value of the item, and you have to make a concerted effort to do it. So if they're saying this item's worth $1,200, if you sell $2,000 worth, you keep $800, send us back the $1,200. But let's say the raffle didn't go well or whatever, and you raised $1,100. You would just send that $1,100 and have a good explanation on why it didn't reach that amount they're looking for. We've never got to that point. I know with Iowa FNAS, we pretty much break even every time. There's not really much left. It's kind of that break even point, which is still a win for sure.
Right. Awesome. Okay. So now you said YWC is the sheep show experience. So what are we talking? What happens? What does that look like? And if somebody has a kid that wants to get involved, how do they do that? So if I show up with my 12-year-old, can they hang out and come and do that, or how does it work?
So on Thursday and Friday of the sheep show in Reno, we kind of have it as a private experience. We bus in kids. We bus in about 300 kids to 350 kids on Thursday and another 300 or so on Friday. We do conservation seminars on wild sheep. My goal is to have them leave with an understanding of how hunters are conservationists. So I start with, hey, let's talk about bighorn sheep. What are their adaptations? Just some education there. Then we roll into the early people that came to the colonies and how there are endless resources. And then move into Theodore Roosevelt and how all of a sudden those that are out using those resources, hunters predominantly, are noticing that the animals are declining. And going into the North American model of wildlife conservation and how it was really those hunters became the first conservationists of those animals. Then from there, I start introducing that we're the Wild Sheep Foundation. We're predominantly a hunting organization, our membership is. And then I throw a bunch of logos up on the board, Ducks Unlimited, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. I say all these groups are passionate about something. We're passionate about sheep. And then I move into what we do. We raise this money. I tell them this is like a giant bake sale this week. We're all over there trying to make money. And then we spend that money throughout the year. And I show them guzzler work. And I show them all the different science that we do, the habitat projects. And then at lunchtime, so that's the first part. That's like the first 45 minutes. Then we have career seminars. We have 9 different outdoor careers that I'm hoping to introduce them to, careers they might not have known even existed. And they get to choose 3 of the 9. So every 25 minutes, they go to one session, and there's 3 taking place. We come back and meet as a whole group, and then we have our scholarship winner for the Wild Sheep Foundation talk. And they're, an undergraduate talks one day and a graduate talks another. And they basically tell their story on how they got interested in wildlife management. And they're a little bit younger, so they can relate maybe a little bit to them and the kids. And the kids get to ask questions. They talk about what college is like. And if you're going into this field of wildlife management, what steps they can kind of take. And then the afternoon is when it really turns fun. Last year, I think we had 37 hands-on stations. We're in an area, it's hard to grasp. We're in 94,400 square feet of space is the youth area. It's huge.
Huge.
We have rock climbing walls. We have multiple archery stations. We have 3D archery, trap archery, target archery. We have balls that float in the air that they're shooting out with kind of Nerf-style bows. We have BB gun ranges and pellet gun ranges. Lots of conservation, duck calling. A couple of years we've had a kayak pool. I'm in the process. That used to be when we'd team up with Cabela's. They had a great kayaking pool. We're ordering one this week, and we're partnering with Department of Wildlife. And so it's like a 10,000 gallon pool with about 2.5 feet of water, 3 feet of water, and you can put 4 or 5 kayaks in there. And they're learning about boat safety. And so the goal there is not just conservation and wildlife management. I want to inspire kids to find something in the outdoors that they're passionate about, that they then spend time in the outdoors, and then they're going to want to make sure those outdoors are around in the future, that when the voting laws come up and they're voting on these wild places and wild spaces, that they're going to think on, a time when they did something that had something to do with that. So that's Thursday and Friday. Saturday, we open the whole event to the public. And it's open from 10 to 4, and it's just the hands-on stations. Those are going. We have free youth raffles. Each kid gets raffle tickets for just showing up. It's a great, great event. Usually if people are showing up on a Thursday or Friday with their family and they're like, oh, I thought we could come to this, we usually tell them to come back when the hands-on stations are going on. And then we have them just kind of register, and they can kind of come in and participate with the school groups at that time. But it's pretty amazing. Last year we had 1,835 kids in the 3 days participate in that. And that was kind of an all-time record. But, most years are in the 15 or 1600s for that event. And
yeah, I'm just like, for our listeners, process that 1,835 kids. And what's the age group? What's the range that they're coming in?
On the Thursday and Friday, the school groups, we like to target 5th grade and up. Okay. 5th grade, okay. We have a whole day of just 5th graders coming in. And then we do kind of a middle school age group as well. Those seem to be the groups that we can get teachers buy-in. They can come in, they can do the field trips. We have a lot of teachers in the Northern Nevada that utilize these checkout kits that I've created. It's kind of like a Wild Sheep Foundation teacher kit box. And it has a bunch of hands-on stuff, 24 lessons. And so those teachers that are using those in 5th grade and up, we like to invite them in first because their students have already had a little background experience with it. And then they get to come in and really learn at a greater depth with some of that. The rest on Saturday, you'll get kids coming in there at 4 years of age. They can do a big majority of those stations all the way up kind of through high school. A little bit harder for those high school age kids. So we have a different program called the Tracks program. And we partner with some different exhibitors on the expo floor. And Leica was the one that kicked this off over a decade ago. And they said, hey, why don't we do something where they're coming out learning stuff through the expo, and then we'll donate a pair of Leica binoculars as part of a raffle. So we have sheep tracks that are on the expo floor, and it goes to 6 different vendors. They walk through on Saturday with a punch card, and each vendor teaches them something different about the outdoors. And then we do a big raffle. And since then, we have Sitka and Kinnetrek boots. Leica, they're always key sponsors, and they donate, a whole Sitka suit or Kinnetrek boots to the winners. And that's for only 12 years old and older. So we'll get those kids coming in. They'll do a couple, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. They'll do usually the pellet gun range and some of those other things. But usually they're into stuff already. and they're there kind of for a different feel and a different experience. Not that they don't do all the things, but most of them will come in for a while, spend an hour, get the tracks card, and then go hang out in the expo hall and go through talking to kind of people making those connections and getting ideas on where to hunt, things like that.
Very cool. So the kids that you're coming in, are any local to like Reno, or you bust them in from rural communities, or, are big city communities part of this? Is there a rural urban thing going on?
There is a little bit. It's harder with the rural just because they show up to school at 9. They hop on a bus. It takes 45 minutes to get here. Then they have to leave early to get back, before it's done, that their experience is very much shortened. So we've had some schools come from about an hour away, and it's worked out. One year we hit weather, a bad storm, and all those school buses were canceled, where the local ones, the school buses could still make it because it wasn't so far. So lately we've really gone more local, inner city schools. We have some very much at-risk schools where these kids are coming in, and it's something like they've never experienced. We're talking, probably 95% Hispanic schools coming in. This one teacher, I invite her every year because she comes in, her kids are excited. She's used the teacher kit the prior month, and the kids, their eyes are just huge as they're coming in. And it's just, they don't get to experience this. And they always write me letters. Thank you so much. Here's what I learned. Here's my favorite activity. And it's neat for them to do those reflections as well. So I try to, flip around, choose different schools. Usually there's waiting lists, but there's certain schools that we invite year after year, that same grade level, because the teacher knows what the experience is like, so they can prepare their students, behavior-wise. At the seminars, you need to be listening for this type stuff. We'll talk about it back in the classroom. And that makes it flow really nice when you start getting teachers that understand this realm. I did have one school once where they came and the principal said, you guys can do all this stuff, but you can't do the BB gun and pellet gun ranges or the archery. So I have all these volunteers running these stations and none of the kids are going there. And so it's a really weird, awkward deal that I wasn't aware that this was happening. And it was just kind of that weird, touchy situation. We do have permission slips we send out, and, parents are aware what they're doing and kind of sign off and all that. But that was one of those things where it's like, well, I'm not going to invite that school back because that's kind of something that we're teaching the safety aspects. And that's important in our society, how you respect these items that are shooting projectiles. It's a combination of schools, but pretty much all within Reno and Sparks city limits.
Very cool. What do you do? Is it all volunteer driven? All the, these different stations, obviously I can only imagine how many volunteers you'd have to do this. Is it all volunteer driven, or how do you get your people out for that?
Yes, it is 100% volunteer driven. The only one that I pay for is the rock climbing wall. He just has insurance specifically for that rock climbing wall. So I help him out on that, but he gives me a really, really good deal. Last year I printed over 300 volunteer name badges just for the youth area. We have this fly fishing group that comes in and they teach the kids how to tie fishing flies, and they'll have 12 people there a day just with that station. And our biggest supporter is the Nevada Department of Wildlife. They come in with their conservation education program, and then they reach out to hunter safety teachers, and they'll be bringing in, 80, 100 volunteers, it seems, that they're able to bring in. Without Department of Wildlife, it would not be what it's at right now. So we've developed over the years a really good relationship, like this kayak pool. I have the funding, I can get this kayak pool, but I can't store it anywhere. It's going to fill, a little travel trailer, and I can't roll it in and out of a storage shed. So they're going to house it on their facility in a trailer that we'll kind of donate, and then they'll license it and they'll use it at some of their events through the year. We'll use it at Sheep Show every year. It's one of those things that you want it to be a multi-day event to get out this big kayak pool. But, we have developed some great relationships, and because of that, they really reach out and get all their volunteers to help at our event as well.
Very cool. Okay, so YWCE, you talked about 1,800 plus kids last year. What are your total education numbers on YWCE alone? I know there's other stuff too, but
Yeah. So, since the 2011-2012 fiscal year, which was the first YWCE, that year there was 120 kids that came to it. The next year there was 601. The next year 954. It just keeps growing. We're at 14,205 kids who've had education just at Sheep Show in those years. And
That is
then
absolutely phenomenal.
And one year, we missed COVID that first time. We had our sheep show, and then COVID hit just a couple months later. That was a really successful year that year. We had an all-time record of 15,000, 70 some kids. The next year, it went digital, if you remember, with Sheep Show. And so that was something that I was able to figure out a way to do the YWCE in a digital realm. Wasn't as good because you don't have the hands-on experiences, but we were able to reach out to classrooms all over the nation at that point and have kids from all over come in. We did the career seminar still. So we had breakout sessions through Zoom that they could go to this session and listen to experts. So that was neat because I could have experts who were in Florida talking. I had a metal detectorist live metal detecting in the middle of Nevada. And he's there showing kids as he's digging things up their passion for metal detecting and stuff with that. So that was neat. We were able to get close to 1,700 kids that digital way, but it's not the same. The next year we tried doing an in-person and a digital experience. It's just not the same. We've kind of gone down to just the full experience and focus on that, just because that's really what's the memories are going to be made, and those lifelong, I think, lessons will stick with the kids better that way.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's pivot over to sheep and talk about that program and what's involved with that.
So sheep is a very fluid and complex program that every single event is different from each other. We'll have some events that are maybe just 12 kids, where we're doing a little archery clinic, teaching 12 kids how to use sights on bows. And then we'll have other ones that might be 50 or 100 kids. And then other ones were part of larger expos that might have, 600 kids. So every single thing is a little different. We are involved with a lot of our chapter and affiliates with some of their banquet dinners where we'll run a youth area. So the kids are kind of being entertained, working on some hobbies, working on some skills, a little bit of conservation there. Well, their parents are kind of doing the fundraising at the other side of the room or in another room. I've been pretty successful with reaching out to different schools in our area. I've made lots of connections both through conservation groups as well as the school district. And we started doing kind of these archery clinics. I really feel that archery is very accepted in our society differently than shooting firearms. And not that I'm there promoting firearms 100%, but it's the same thing. You're shooting projectiles and it's all about safety. And so I'll get these clinics for schools that will come in. We'll run 20 or 30 kids an introduction to archery. And we'll do that for several months, once a month. And then I'll partner up with a local indoor gun range, and they'll have these kind of a youth firearm safety class, and they'll teach 12 kids at a time. So the first people I reach out to are people who've attended the Youth Wildlife Conservation Experience or maybe these archery clinics. And then you'll get kids kind of doing that. And then from there, we'll kind of start saying, all right, well, now we want to take some youth on maybe an outdoor experience where we're going maybe on a hunt of some sort. Sheep Foundation is hard because, like Ducks Unlimited, it's pretty easy to go on a duck hunt. Whitetail forever, pretty easy to go on a whitetail hunt. But I'm still trying to get a sheep tag. And so it's going to be really hard for me to pay for a youth to go out and shoot a bighorn sheep if I haven't even got to experience that yet. So we try to find other experiences that they can kind of do. And I'm excited right now because in 2 weeks, we're doing wild pig hunt in Texas with some first-time shooters, predominantly youth. And it all triggered from these archery clinics that I've been doing year after year. And I started noticing I'd have the same kids showing up month after month. And they were getting really good with shooting with my borrowed bows with no sights, but they still were pretty terrible at hitting accurately. So I started a Wild Sheep Foundation archery team last November. and 13 kids joined it, and that was almost too big. I wanted it limited to 10, and 2 kids had their own bow out of the 13. So they're all using my bows. We're mounting on sights, trying to teach them. It was chaos trying to teach 13 people how to use sights the first couple months. For Christmas, over half got bows for Christmas. Then we started getting pretty competitive because now they're using their same bow over and over. We had several then enter competitions last year. One kid went with me down to Las Vegas to the Vegas shoot, the biggest archery shoot in the world. And he ended up taking first in his division in the state of Nevada. So his ego and enthusiasm for the sport went up. He then did the Ruby Mountain shoot. We went out with him. I took my daughter and we shot that one. He placed there as well. So now we're starting to have kids kind of compete a little bit. So now I reached out to that Wild Sheep Foundation team and said, hey, we're going to put together this youth hunt. Who's kind of interested? And so working on, some of the kids have hunter safety already, some didn't, and able to use some of the funding to get some Southwest Airline tickets for them. The parents are paying their own way. I found a great facility down there, haven't been, but had lots of conversations with the rancher. His mom's going to cook us dinners. We're going to pay her to get the food for lunches for us. They have a ranch house where we're all staying, and they have 14 blinds, and we're going to use 7 of those each day. And since we hunt just in the evening and night, he's letting us use all his bass ponds all morning long. So it's going to be pretty cool. We fly out next Friday. We hunt Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and we take one day off of school on Monday and come back. It's our Nevada Day weekend, so we get Friday off of school next Friday. So that's ultimately what I see is, you introduce them, you start finding passions in different areas, and then you keep increasing that passion until it truly becomes maybe a lifelong hobby or skill that they can take with them forever.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. So when you think back over, over a decade you've been doing this, is there any story that stands out or any experience that stands out with any kids where you're like, wow, like that? I'm sure you've had some experiences, good and bad, over the years.
Yeah, there's definitely been good and bad. One that stands out is more parent-wise. It was my very first, what we call today, Nevada outdoor experience. We had done an outdoor kind of youth expo, kind of like the YWCE, but in the summertime at a gun range here in Reno. And I'd worked so hard. We had 22s and shotguns and metal detectors and just all sorts of outdoor stuff that is different than sheep show that you can actually do outside. And this parent comes by and, I'm running the raffle at the time. And she's like, are you in charge of this? I'm like, yeah. She's like, when I got here and saw that you guys were having kids shoot 22s and guns, I was very much against it. I hear a lot on the news about how bad this stuff is. And she goes, your volunteers asked if I wanted to shoot. And so I tried it. And she goes, man, I can see why people like it. And I quote, she goes, it's so damn fun. And I thought, wow, that's kind of awesome to hear. But I heard the same thing 2 hours later from another parent, that it was her first time shooting a firearm. And she too thought, wow, this was really good. How you guys managed it and ran it was educational. And I had a lot of fun doing it. So I think it's neat to see when the parents are getting stuff out of it, even though we're targeting the kids. If you can get the parents involved, it's going to be a lot easier for the kids to get involved. Some interesting things now is I usually take a big tub of like Germ-X or some type of antibacterial stuff, kind of triggered from COVID. But when we're doing these archery things at some of these events where we're getting 300 or 400 kids coming through, touching the bows, all of a sudden I kind of became, man, you watch them, they're sitting there and they're eating a popsicle earlier. And it's all over them and it's on their hand now touching my bow. And then I grab the bow and my hand's sticking to it. I found some ways to kind of keep things a little more sanitary. It's just interesting. You have all sorts of kids, and archery is the one thing that event after event, I'll have kids reflect. We send out surveys to kids and to parents, and archery comes back every time as the number one thing that they like the most. And it's kind of that gateway skill, I think. You can talk about hiking, talk about kayaking, but it's hard to really experience kayaking unless you have like a pool or something. But archery is one of those things that you see on TV, you see on television, you see on shows, very accepted, but a lot of kids haven't shot it. Usually 65% of all the kids that come to these events have never shot a bow. And they shoot it for the first time, and they're kind of hooked. They might shoot terribly, but those young kids get so excited, they don't want to listen to the instruction. They want to put it in and just start shooting arrows. And you've got to calm them down. Okay, take a breath. Look, we're pull it back. Don't let go. So it's fun. It can be frustrating at times, but I really try to put myself in their shoes, and I just know that they're excited, whatever they're doing. And you just got to keep that passion without jumping on them. They're new to this. You can't be, getting mad at them when they're just excited to do something.
Yeah. Well said. So how important is youth engagement for the future of what we love? And there's so much politics around firearms and even hunting and all that sort of stuff. And that's always the social license aspect of it. And I know 100% why you're in this is for the right reasons. It's for the kids. It has nothing to do with the future of anything. It's just because you're passionate about it and you're passionate about kids. But, I hear this over and over, and you as your primary duty as an educator and then an educator for the outdoors and a pro hunting message, how important is this to reach these kids? And how, is this going to save hunting in the future, I guess?
I hope so. My goal is not to convert people to all be hunters. It's to have an appreciation of the outdoors, to have an appreciation of the shooting sports, and to kind of understand that there's these wild places and lands that are out there and need to be protected. They're there, they need to be utilized, but they need to be utilized in the right ways so that they're there for future generations. So I'm very hopeful that what we're doing is helping. You don't know the impact you really make. But it is interesting over the years, besides the surveys, I get kids that'll come back to me, 9 years later, and say, I went to the sheep show and I'm now majoring in wildlife management because of that. And it sounds crazy, but I've had at least 8 people that have come back and told me this. I had a prior student in my class that then did the sheep show because we went on a field trip as our 5th grade there. And she's now in college, and she came back in August. I hadn't seen her since she left 5th grade. And she told me all about where she's at in science. And she goes, your teaching made me interested in science. And going to that sheep show, I can't imagine she remembered it, made me go into this field of science that I'm going into. And you'll hear that. And it's really kind of cool. I wish I could track everyone and understand and hear all their stories, but you don't. But it's pretty amazing at the number that do run into me somewhere and talk about these things. And so I think it's 100% worth it. If they have that appreciation, and when it comes down as an adult to making decisions that affect these activities and these places, the more experiences they have, the more they're going to see a need and a desire to kind of protect those hobbies and those places.
Awesome. So Ryan, you've literally changed the lives of 20,000 kids. I think we were talking 18,000 plus.
Well, that's just at Sheep Show. When we combine the sheep program into there, that's another 95,400 kids. So since 2012, we're actually at 109,628 kids that have really gone through specifically some aspect of our sheep show or our sheep program that we do. That's a lot of kids.
That's phenomenal. Absolutely inspiring and jaw-dropping. Unbelievable. So where do you go from here? Like, how do you top that? Like, mic drop, I'm done. Like, where does the program go? Where do you go? Obviously it's growing. It's bigger, better than ever. There's more money than ever. Just stay the course, or is there a next step?
Yeah, we're always trying to make it better. As educators and as people in conservation, we always want more out of it. Ideally, I'd love to clone myself and just, place me all over. But that can't work. So, one major step in that direction was creating those teacher checkout boxes that we have locally. We also have one we ship around the nation to teachers. And, that's all written every lesson in there is basically written or adapted by me. So it's kind of our conservation method with wild sheep. So that instead of me going into those classrooms, a teacher's able to take that, look through the lesson plan book, and choose a couple lessons in the week to kind of teach and execute in the classroom. So that was a way, without cloning myself, to really make a big impact. And we get a couple thousand kids. I think last year was like 35 or 38 classrooms utilized that kit. That's a big number changing without me specifically being there. We're also partnering up with like the National Bighorn Sheep Center in DuBois, Wyoming. And we've partnered with them for a couple years, but now we're getting even more on the same track and how we can really help each other out at new levels. And so through the Sheep Foundation this year, Gray Thornton and I had a conversation, and we decided to kind of roll a bigger part of my budget up to kind of go into really helping them help all of us. And so that might be, trying to get money for field trips into their museum so that more schools can come see them. Maybe partnering up with them and help paying for airfare for them to go to the National Science Teachers Association convention to introduce teachers to these checkout kits and do workshops there on bighorn sheep that then introduce them to the lessons they can take home and utilize. So I think it's really trying to just find the right people in the right places that have the same passions that can take that message, those items, onward and upward. Always looking for passionate people. It's the volunteers and the people that make the programs work. And so if there's people somewhere out there that, have a passion, want to do something and need ideas or need funding, I'm the person. Reach out to me and let's see what we can kind of do and create something unique for your area and try to do that. The downfall, of course, is, I'm teaching all school year, so I don't have that flexibility always to go everywhere to run all those things.
Well, that's just exactly where, I was thinking is we tried to get you up here this year for our event. We're like, I'd love to, because we got funding for it. We can secure funding for it. But you're like, no, I'm already committed for another event, and which is fantastic. But that's where I'm looking. Like I look at our directors and our volunteers, and we're kind of at capacity. We all have this energy. We want a youth program in some capacity, but we don't really have anyone that's. And you need that Ryan Brock. You need that volunteer that'll take and run with it and sort of make it their own, right? So, I guess this is a call to volunteers. If anyone's interested, you have people that will support you. We just need someone to lead.
Absolutely. In the National Bighorn Sheep Center, they've been great with me even funding their travel to go to certain events. But now we're even double booked on weekends, working two different events and that stuff. But yeah, ideally, if you have a volunteer in the location, it's networking. Right. I've been running Eastern Chapters of Wild Sheep Foundation. We do a big event with theirs, and I'm able to network distance, over the months ahead of time. But having someone there, like I'm in Reno, I've built up all these connections over time, and it's gotten easier and easier and bigger. And so not that an event has to be big and massive. It starts off small. Every event starts off small. And then you take and what worked, what didn't, and just kind of keep growing it. So yeah, I would say advice, don't be scared to take on that role of, hey, I want to kind of organize something. It didn't have to be giant and big. It might be 20, 25 kids, that first one. And we look at quality over quantity. Quality is more important than quantity. Having big numbers is nice. It's great to say we've impacted over 100,000 kids, but I know that 100,000 kids don't have the same experience with each other as maybe, several thousand of those kids have a totally different in-depth experience, more so than some of those that were more, half-day, just little events with that. So quality's a very important thing as well. So it doesn't have to be a big event.
Awesome. Super inspiring, Ryan, and amazing. So I guess before we sign off, if somebody wants to support a youth program, support the Wild Sheep Foundation youth movement, what do they do? What do they have to get involved?
I think reaching out to me is a great way. I'm on the staff website of the Wild Sheep Foundation. That's a great way to reach out, and then I can direct you in particular ways that you feel would be important for either your time or funding with that. I think that's probably the first step, and then we can just figure out where you want to go with your volunteerism.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for everything, and you truly are an inspiration. You gave a very amazing presentation at our board of directors meeting in Bozeman there last month, and it was one of my favorite presentations the whole weekend. I was just fired up when you gave your talk. So super inspiring, and I thank you for everything you continue to do day in and day out for youth in the Wild Sheep Foundation.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak today.